Welcome to Dropped In, Renee. I am so excited to be here with you and to share this time and space with one another and to welcome you to Dropped In.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a fan of your podcast, Megan. I love listening to it. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Um, so I always love for you to share with us who you are and what you do as opposed to me reading a boring bio. So let's hear the
Mhm.
juice. Let's hear the goods.
The goods. Well, I'm a mindset mentor and a spiritual teacher, I guess, is what I am at heart. And really, I just love all things spiritual. It's been a journey that I've been on, and it's interesting because I've been just recently sharing that it feels like the past 20 years has been me just coming out of the spiritual closet. This is what's been happening. And it now, in terms of my work and what I do, that also has been a transformation. But essentially, I have a membership called Spiritually Wired, where we blend, mindset and wellness and business and all through like a spiritual lens, which is where I feel it intersects in a way that you can receive, or I know for me personally, I've received the most transformation and I've seen the most impact is when you kind of can bring those two together of like the subconscious and the mindset healing, and also this awareness of this greater energy that is always at play. And when you can tune into that and tune into yourself and really allow for it to come together, there's really a lot of magic that happens.
I
Mhm.
love it. It sounds divine.
Mm.
So you mentioned 20 years of coming out of the spiritual closet. I can definitely relate to that.
It sounds like a lot. Makes me sound very old.
It's my understanding that you haven't always been in this line of work. Is that correct? What did you do pre coming out of the closet?
Pre coming out of the closet. Well, I did. So I studied economics and I worked in finance. And then that's when I had my first child, and he is turning 24 now. So at the time, yeah, like after I had him, I decided to, like, I stayed at home and was a full-time mom, had my other daughter, and I was always someone who I was happy in that space, feeling grateful. And at the same time, I knew something was missing, but I almost felt guilty thinking that. And I remember that there was a mom, the kids were in preschool at the time, and a mom invited me to be a part of this life coaching group. I had no idea what it was, but I'm just like, well, okay, that sounds like fun. And it's once a month. And if it means that I can get out of the house and have like that evening to myself, I'm in. And I remember like that first time just being asked, what do you want? Was it completely floored me, because at that time in my life, and it's not that I was, again, unhappy. I just had never really asked myself, like, what do I want? No one else had asked me that question either. I had always done what was just expected of me. And, it turned out okay. It's not that it was like this wrong turn, but it was such a big awakening and it just opened me up and started this whole path of wanting to really start to discover who I was and to figure that out. What do I want? And I'm still figuring that out, because now I know that it's always evolving. And that was really just that call for expansion. However, it was just like that simple moment. And then from there started me on different paths, which, at one point I was in the coaching space for women, probably like 15 years ago, running events and did lots of different things. But the path to where I am today this version of Renee Walker Wellness, which is really embracing the spirituality behind it. I'd say like 8 years ago when I did my yoga teacher training certification, and I was essentially, just forced into using my voice and forced into teaching. And it was that little nudge and push that just opened up the throat chakra, which I'm still working on because it turns out there's still a little bit of blocks, as you know, right? We're always feeling back some layers. But yeah, it's so when I say it's been 20 years, it feels that way because for a long time I was like so passionate, and all I wanted to do was learn about, the personal development, which led into spirituality and, yoga philosophy and all of those different things. But I felt like I was hiding that part of me. Like I felt like I was living a double life where it was like I had these friends that were in my coaching space that knew me. I felt safe to, have these conversations, really answer the deep questions of like, how are you really? Not just like, how are you? That I'm fine. So I had that space, but then I also had the me that was the mom and was, wearing the social mask to a certain extent and doing what was expected. And so it feels like it took that long in some ways for me to merge the two, where I felt like I could be fully myself and not hold back in any of those areas.
I love that. I love that. I love that you called it the call for expansion as well, because that is just like a beautiful visual. And I can really get into everything that you've shared, especially in terms of the pivot and, like having that one coaching group, call per month, and having that as a catalyst to get into the work that you do today. So was it
Mhm.
easy for you to shift gears from going from economics and finance to what you do today?
Very easy because I really should not have been in economics or finance. And it's funny. It's like one of those things that I was good in math, and I remember, I mean, absolutely love and adore my father, but it's not like anything creative was not given as an option in terms of, and I'm turning 50 next year. So even at the time, I feel like our options, right, in terms of like, what are we going to study, were quite limited compared to what it is today. So for me, that was like the safe space where I actually felt like I was being a bit of a rebel, studying economics. And I enjoyed it. I did well in it. But when I was doing it because it was like an acceptable thing to do, not at all because I felt passionate about it. Now, funny enough, I ended up marrying someone, from my time there. My husband is an investment advisor, and I see him and his passion for it. And that's where it was so interesting for me, where it was like, as soon as my workday was done, I was like shutting it off, and it just wasn't what I was passionate about. Yet like, you can see the difference, right, between someone who actually is passionate about it. So I'd say no, it was not difficult to make that switch. Where it was difficult was more in, there was a lot of fear of judgment. So I feel that part of what was always holding me back into being into this space was the fear of, again, it wasn't like the traditional thing. It's not a profession. Like, there was a lot for me that I needed to heal, that it was okay for me to do this. I'm a Reiki master, and oh my goodness, like I remember there was so much judgment around, like I can't even, still to this day, I find it shocking that I actually say it, because it felt like I just grew up with experiencing more of that judgment around it. So that was my own thing that I needed to like be okay with, and be okay with the fact that, yeah, maybe some people were going to judge me for going on this path, yet it felt so aligned and it was so helpful to me. And it's been such an integral part of my own healing journey that, over time, none of that mattered anymore. But it took time to get there, and it took a lot of compassion and really giving myself the space to be where I am today and be able to embrace it in a whole different way, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Hmm.
I feel that deeply.
Yeah. Did you feel that? Because I know you had a career in nursing before, right? Did that, like, how was it for you?
Um, it's fascinating because my parents were adamant that I went to university and I didn't really know
Hmm.
what I wanted to do, and so I started my degree in business and economics
Hmm.
as well. And
Hmm.
I was like 17. I'm like, you know what, this is just not for me. And they're like, well, you have to choose something. And my mom was a nurse, and she's like, just become a nurse. I'm like, okay. So as much as I loved my relationship and my career, and the journey in and of itself, it felt so good to finally just take the big leap and leave that career, because
Mm.
it was not conducive or supportive for my mind, body, or soul. It wasn't. And for those listening, and I are both in a writing mastermind together. So being an empath, Renee, as a nurse, it's probably the worst career choice that you can choose if you aren't energetically clearing
Yeah.
and protecting yourself, right? Because I was literally taking on people's energy, not knowing, and yeah, it was killing me. So
Mm.
to finally have the courage to take the leap during COVID and just say I'm out was the best thing that I could have done. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing how when you look back, right, it's always like that gift of like perspective and hindsight. And it's like you obviously you needed to go through that path, like that was like a part, that's what led you to where you are today. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know for me it's the same thing. It's like I needed to go through that healing and that realization and that awareness to be where I am today. So it's always fascinating to kind of look back and to see, yeah, I can see why I needed to experience that. Yet at the same time, sometimes you just look back and you're like, why? Why did I not figure it out sooner?
Yes,
Why
right?
did I
Yeah.
take that long?
For sure. And also, like, I've been in the world of entrepreneurship and coaching for 9 years. And so do the math. I was holding
Hmm.
on to nursing for a good 5 years while I was still building my coaching business part time, which I highly recommend for everybody. Like, there's no need
Hmm.
to just go all in until you are fully able and financially able to. But there was so much fear there of like going all in on me,
Yeah,
right? But
yeah.
when you take that leap and you have that courage, you are supported beyond your imagination. Wouldn't you agree?
Hmm. 100%. Yeah,
Mm.
and it is. It means something in a whole, like in a whole new, a whole different way too, right? Because you know that there's so much to it more than just a decision to like say, oh, this is a new career path. It encompasses so much, and it does feel like a calling, I think, for those of us who do decide to be on this path. And it's amazing to see how many people are kind of being led towards really being in spaces where they can help people and the planet. Like we need it. We need more light workers that are prepared to say yes and to really help to raise the frequency of this planet. So we are
Yeah.
needed, but it's amazing to kind of see the shift in ourselves, and then when you see it around you, it's quite lovely. I'd say the past 20 years have changed quite a bit. The landscape
Mm.
has changed, right? Even
Yes,
the past
yes.
4 years for sure.
So,
Hmm.
having met your husband in finance, has he been supportive with your evolution and
Mm,
your career shifts?
yes, I'd say, it was really interesting because I can't say that he understands all of it. And, in the beginning, he was always very supportive. But if there was anything, it was me holding myself back because, again, I still had that fear of judgment. And those were all assumptions. What I learned over time was that I was creating these stories of people judging me, of him judging me and not accepting who I was as I was growing, as I was changing and evolving. So much of that part of it was really just me creating those stories. And I was working with a coach, and it was really, she helped me so much in like finding just the strength to be open and to share. And every time I would open up and share where I was and what I wanted to do, it was always met with nothing but like, that's a great, yeah, good, okay, sure, So he was always there, and but kind of in his quiet way. And what I really come to learn now, and what has been so interesting to, again, when you look back, is that he is such a grounded person. And I now appreciate so much how him being so grounded and being kind of in this reality, this world we live in. I know you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, sister.
I know you know what I mean. I don't know if I need to expand, but being like grounded into this reality has allowed me or given me the space to really explore more and to be more of me, because I know, okay, he's making sure that everything is okay. I mean, we have two kids, there's still, life is still happening, but I have so much appreciation for that yin and yang, that balance that has really allowed me to, I feel, be more free to try different things and to be more adventurous, if you will, and start, this business and do different things. So yeah, he's been very supportive. And I'd say now he's towards more kind of the end of his career. And I feel him being even more excited about what I'm doing, because
Mm.
our kids aren't at home anymore. So it's our life is looking very different. While as before, when the kids were younger, there was definitely more of a sense of like, all right, like do all of this, I'm supportive. And at the same time, there's like the everyday reality of what needs to be done in terms of looking after the kids and all that. So that was always our kind of balance that we had to work on. And now there's a new freedom that we're experiencing that is new. I mean, like every relationship it evolves. It's neat to be in this space.
Mm, I love that. I love that. I can definitely relate to everything you shared there. I remember connecting with I'll just call her a psychic medium for lack of better terms, but I was questioning my relationship because it was just like, you know, I'm in this world of spirituality, and also from the outside world, there's a lot of influence around what your partner should be,
Yeah.
and what they should be participating in if you're in this energetic realm. And she said, no, he's the perfect match for you, because if he was where you were, you'd both be floating up in the ethers all day, every day, and not getting anything done. So,
See, I'm getting the chills because
yeah.
it's that's exactly it.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
she said he keeps you grounded, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful energetic match. So yeah, I love that you shared that.
Yeah.
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 And I love
Yeah.
this next chapter for you both together.
Yeah, it's interesting how, I mean, when you have kids, you get so focused, like your whole life revolves around them. And at the same time, it's an awareness that your kids will, at some point, leave the house. And so it's so important, I do believe, for couples, but also for ourselves, to not only be in the role of, for moms, it's a struggle often, right? Because it's so easy to identify ourselves fully with our children. And one thing that, I don't know if I've said this publicly, maybe, but because it may, may trigger some people, but it's like your children are like your greatest gifts. And at the same time, they can also be your greatest excuse for not doing things because it's so easy to get caught up in like, and I know I'm sure you've worked with a lot of women who will be like, oh, yes, like not now, like once this happens, once
Yeah.
this is in place, once this, and it's so easy to fall into that where years go by and you've not put yourself anywhere near close to the top of your list. It's like everyone else comes before you, and it's so easy to lose yourself in that process. And it happens just in those like small moments of always saying yes to something else and saying no to yourself. And the more you do that, the more you kind of enforce that belief that you're not a priority. So
Mhm.
I've been someone I've loved being a mom, and I've also known that for me, there was more to who I was, and I wanted there to be more than just that particular role. So it was always like there's a lot of tension in that balance for sure.
I can imagine. I can imagine. And how beautiful is it for your children to witness you coming into
Hmm.
your full power and potentiality, right? It's beautiful for them to see that, you've received the call and you've answered it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I've really experienced that now, like at 24 and 21, like they've both, and they will say even today, my son just like happened to drop by, and then I was like doing some coaching, and then as he's leaving, he's like, I just want to say I'm really proud of you. I love that you're like he just went on something, and I thought, okay, he sees it. He
Yeah.
sees it, even though I never was one to try to convince. Like people will ask me, like, as a meditation teacher, do your kids meditate and are they into spirituality and all those things? And I'm like, no, I've never forced them into doing any of those things because I do believe it's like everyone's on their own journey. It's that Khalil Gibran quote of like, children are born through you and they're not of you. And really all we can do is be who we are and lead from what we're doing, right? Lead from, can't think of the word right now, from example, I suppose. So I see that they're both getting into it in their own way. And that really is how it needs to be.
Yes, you're
Hmm.
modeling to them what's possible. It's beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I do my best. I've also modeled a lot of nervous system activation and a lot of other things, just to be clear.
You're not
It's been,
perfect.
I did say it was a 20-year journey. So actually, that was one of the things my daughter told me recently. She's like, wow, you're so much calmer now than you used to
Oh,
be. I'm like, yeah.
yeah. I use my tools.
Yes, yes. It wasn't always this way.
I love it. So share
Yeah.
with us, I would love to know like what's it like to work with you? I know you host retreats, you have your membership.
Hmm.
So what does this look
Hmm.
like?
Hmm. Yeah, I am I love working with people in different ways. And I feel like you and I have like kind of parallel ways in which we do things, which is why like as soon as we met, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally connect with her energy because, people will the way that they are able to receive and the way that they're able to grow, everyone is a little bit different. And so I feel like for myself, I'm most aligned when I can offer different ways of healing and ultimately connecting. So I the main thing that I offer is the membership, which has just I've just relaunched it in a new way because I used to teach yoga, and yoga and meditation were a big part of my offerings. And it's interesting, this past year, it's like as we evolve and as we grow, I knew just deep down that it was time to let go of the yoga teaching aspect, the asana piece of my practice, yet it was like a very scary decision to me because I had a good little, good little thing going and it was fun and I enjoyed it. And at the same time, I knew that it was taking me away from where I needed to be. And that's always like one of the things when we're on this spiritual path is really leaning and trusting our intuition, but that inner knowing is not always necessarily what we want to hear either, right?
Yes.
Sometimes the inner knowing is like, really?
Yep,
Do I have
really?
to do that?
Yep.
Because I'm pretty comfortable right now. So it took me a little bit of time and but then I did. I made that decision. It's amazing how once you do it, everything kind of opens up and aligns. So the membership that I created is really a place, just a space for people to come together because I do believe that we learn through community. And that's what I find to be the most impactful is when women come together and we're just real and authentic and raw about what's actually happening in our lives. We can learn so much from each other, but also kind of for the seekers, right? Because I've always been a seeker and I've always been curious and wanted to learn different modalities and different ways of healing. So it's that space where we do where we have some lessons, but then we also practice, combine it with certain practices to help us embody whatever it is that we're learning. So a lot of meditation, I would say, but then, also some tapping, as you know, and some hypnosis and different things. So that's the Spiritually Wired membership with some live classes and a big library of recordings as well. And then, yeah, I have some retreats that I do in person. So that's my in person. I feel like it's important as teachers to have that that connection with people in person. I know you just had one, right? I love the virtual space. And I think when we can kind of blend the two, it's like the perfect combination because those like that in-person connection is so powerful too. So I also offer some retreats. So I have one at the end of October. I'm in like the Toronto area. So we have one in Caledon at the end of October, October 25th to the 27th, which is a blend of like positive psychology and spiritual wisdom. So always trying to like blend and marry like the different ways that we can offering different perspectives on this work. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, it's so needed. It's so needed. And I love the name of your membership, by the way. That's such a great name.
Thank you. It's actually my daughter who came up with it. So I'm giving her full credit. It was so interesting. She's really getting into marketing and enjoying. And so she was working with me this summer. She's in her 4th year at university. And we were just like chatting and I'm like, okay, I want to attract this name that resonates. And we were throwing so many different names. And as soon as she said that word, and she just moved on to something else, but she said spiritually wired, and it's like you feel it in your body, right? I just felt, oh my goodness, that's it. That's the one. And it's
You
also the
have
name of my
arrived.
podcast.
Yes, that was my next question.
I know, like I might as well keep it simple.
Doing all the things. So let's hear about your podcast. I'm so excited for you.
Yes, yeah, my podcast launching September 25th. It is all, again, mindset, wellness, business, but all through a spiritual lens and like a mix of solo episodes and some interviews. I'm hoping that you're going to come on my
You know it.
podcast. But just having these real conversations and taking the spirit, a more like energetic spiritual approach to life,
Mm,
which more and more people are talking about, but sometimes I feel like maybe not enough.
yes.
Having been and as you know, like life coaching was a big part of my transformation, yet then it like kind of shifted in the sense of, and I don't say that of all life coaching because I think there's like some incredible life coaches and the ones that I worked with all had that awareness of something else, but
Mhm.
it can easily come from ego, right? You can be working on all sorts of goals, and if they're coming from ego and you're, climbing the wrong mountain, then you're not actually going to where it is you're being called to go. So it's that was like a big thing for me, was to do more of the spiritual coaching, because now it's more, let's talk with your higher self. Let's set goals from that place so that we're actually aligned and we're not doing the shoulds and the expectations and the, checking off boxes, which it's so easy to get caught in.
It certainly is. I'm so glad that you shared that. And so, for those listening, how would they know if they're coming from an egoic space or from their highest self? Because I love
Yeah.
that.
I know, and it's a question that we like, and I'm sure you get that question a lot too, like the how can you tell the difference? And even with your intuition, right? How do you know? Like, is this just my thoughts? Is this or is this actually intuition? And for me, it's like, is it coming from fear? Is it coming from love? So your higher self has a frequency of love. And when I, say love, I mean the highest frequency. Your ego has comes from fear. And it's not to say, as we talked about, that sometimes your intuition, your higher self may be warning you against something. So it may be like, okay, you need to take a step back. But there's a different energy to it, because it is coming from a place of love, of
Mhm.
protection, of supporting you, versus when it's fear, it's more coming from a place of holding you back, keeping you away from that flow, from that alignment. So I always say, just ask, is this coming from love or is this coming from fear? Which, is a big part of the Course in Miracles.
Mhm.
And it just takes time to really learn to tune into your body, right? Would you say, like, that's the biggest thing,
Mhm.
is we're often so disconnected, and all of these different practices that I teach, you teach, so many other people, it really is just about coming back and coming back into our bodies and really paying attention to those signs, and like, what does fear feel like in my body, and what does love look like in my body? And it's different for all of us, and it's such a personal experience that no one else can teach us. It
Mhm.
really is about us experiencing it, and then over time beginning to trust it a little bit more and more and more. So it's a process, it's a journey to get to that place where you maybe feel a little bit more confident in trusting it. But I wish it was a black and white. It would be so nice. Like,
Wouldn't it?
this is option A. This is what you need to do, and this is love. Always a little bit messier.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
It would be so lovely, but not as fun, right?
Definitely not.
No, no, no.
Uh, oh my goodness. I could be here with you all day. It's been such an honor to have you here.
It's been so
Um,
nice.
so how can people hang out with you? How can they learn more about your work? Yeah.
Yeah. My website, so reneewalkerwellness.com. And then try to hang out quite a bit on Instagram at Renee Walker Wellness as well. I'm like you, I have a love-hate relationship for it.
Yes.
But those are
Yes.
two good places to find me for sure.
Awesome. And of course, your podcast.
And my podcast.
Yes.
Yes,
So
Spiritually
exciting.
Wired.
Yes. We'll be getting drunk
I'm
time with you.
so looking forward to that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Thank
love
you,
it.
Megan. This
Oh
is
my goodness.
such a
Thank
delight. I just
you.
love you. I think you're amazing. I love your energy. And I always feel that energy of love. There
Oh,
you go. That's what you
thank,
embody. So
thank
thank
you.
you.
I'm anchoring that in. So beautiful.
Mm. Mm.
So before we say goodbye for now, I always ask this question. So for those that are listening who have this pull or desire to like throw in the towel or to quit, what is a message of hope that you can offer them?
What a beautiful question. Hmm. I'm going to anchor in. it really is to remember, to listen, to come back to who they are. And it's in the stillness, in the quiet, that you find yourself again, that you remember the light that you are. And so, if anything, in those moments, it's how can you love yourself in that moment? And often it's like, can we just turn down the volume on all of the external noises and the busyness and just turn up the volume on our essence and that divine aspect that is within you.
Hmm. Beautiful. Thank
Mm,
you so much for your wisdom, for your lights, and all that you do in this world.
thank
It's been such
you.
a gift to spend time with you today.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Mhm.